Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cozy Corner. My name is Lee and this is my library. So grab a mug of something yummy and settle in for some talk of books. I apologize for the state of my voice. I am currently sick with bronchitis, but we are antibioticed up and I sound worse than I feel. But that will not stop me from making my video of everything that I read in February. February was a decent reading month. I've had better, but I've had much worse. I finished 6 books in the month of February, and I would say that it was probably about it was a middle of the road month. Majority of my books that I read this month were 3 stars, which is about an average for me, as in they are good books that I think everyone should read. I didn't have any that were particularly terrible, and I did actually have one 5-star, which I will save for the very end. And if you've watched any of my previous videos, I'm sure that will be no surprise to those of you who know. So anyway, let's get into the books that I read in February. So, the lowest rated book for the month of February was The Veil Diaries, Book 1, Trying to Live with the Dead by B.L. Brunnemer. This is a pick-me-girl ghost story. We follow Alexis, who is able to see ghosts via a long-time family tradition on the female side of the family. After a fairly traumatic situation with her mom, she moves in with her uncle and cousin. New school, new life, but she still sees dead people, and her job basically is to get ghosts from where they're trapped in the mortal plane to the afterlife, beyond the veil. So this is happening, and she stumbles upon a group of 5 guy friends, and they sort of adopt her into the group, and she becomes just the definition of pick-me-girl. Literally, if you ever watch pick-me-girl TikTok, most of what's in there will be in here verbatim. A few things that I had issues with. This is an indie published book, and I hesitate to be too critical because I know the amount of work it takes to publish independently, but there were grammatical errors within the first 5 chapters. The dialogue was a little lackluster. I thought the plot was good, but there were just editing issues in here that I really struggled with, which is something that's really off-putting for me. But like I said, I think the plot was good, which kept me reading. It was just so much, I'm the only girl in this group of guys. They all simultaneously think I'm attractive and yet are all respectful enough to not degrade me in any way. I kept reading because they all sounded cute. They were all very cute. Is that the only reason why I want to read the sequel? Maybe. Anyway, I gave this 2 stars. Not really the audience for it. I know there would be so many people who would really dig into this and would get sucked in. Did I enjoy it? Yeah. It kept me motivated. I kept reading. But wasn't all that impressed. Moving on to my 3-star books. The first one I finished in the month was 100 Cupboards The Door Before by N.D. Wilson. This is the prequel to the 100 Cupboards trilogy, which I did not know existed until I made my February TBR video, and a very kind viewer commented that there was a prequel to this, and I was completely blown away because I did not know there was one. But this follows the story of Hyacinth and the 2 Westmore twin boys, Caleb and Mordecai. And I believe from what I read that Hyacinth's family lives in our world, but there is still magic in our world, and her family has some magical elements in it. They're not very clearly explained. It more focuses on Hyacinth and her ability to read and understand animals and people, which sets her apart from her family. But where the Westmore twins are from definitely has magic, and Mordecai is what's called a WHOPPER son, 7th son of a magical person, and he is gifted with plant-based abilities. So for Mordecai, the plant that awoke, his magical abilities were grapevines. And basically there is this evil presence in the form of Hermione, which is like this evil witch lady that they are trying to escape from. And of course, they inadvertently bring her into Hyacinth's world, and she helps them entrap her. And all of them wind up in a place called Henry, Kansas, which is where the beginning of the 100 Cupboards series starts, in that town. Yeah, I think I gave this 3 stars because I think this is it kind of fills in the gaps of the origin story of how Henry's parents met. Little bit of a spoiler. Hyacinth and Mordecai are Henry's parents, who's the main character of the 100 Cupboards trilogy. But it was really cool to see a little bit more history of who the main villain is in that trilogy, and of course, Henry's parents. So, like I said, it was a really cool sort of filling in some plot holes. Was it as good as the rest of the series? No, it's just a short little novella. But if you liked the trilogy, then you'll definitely like this. My next, I just realized that I read 7 books in February, not 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm missing one. Hang on. I found it. Let's just do this one first. Okay, so this is Slate House by David Mitchell. It is a very short book in comparison to other things that I read. Just about 240 pages. This is a little bit of a horror paranormal thriller. I don't like saying thriller because that implies that I was thrilled. I wasn't really. But let's talk about the plot first. So Slate House is this house that appears every 9 years and sort of sucks in wayward people. And it turns out, you find out pretty quickly from the beginning, that there are 2 people, a boy and a girl, who are always with this house. They are twins, and they live in this house. But how often or why people get sucked into this house and disappear because they can't leave is explained throughout this book, and it is told in new stories every 9 years. So you'll see times shift, you'll see characters change, the world changes. It starts in the 70s. Yeah, it starts in the 70s and goes all the way to 2015. The pattern of people appearing in the house and why they're there doesn't change, but the delivery of that does change. So it's very much you're not quite sure what's real and what's not until you've gotten to the end of the story. I say that it wasn't really a thriller because I wasn't really scared. I don't know, I didn't really find it eerie. I thought it was an interesting premise, and I thought it was a very interesting concept for a novella. I just did not find it spooky. I don't know. I was not blown away by how eerie or chilling it was. Interesting, definitely interesting. And I think people who like horror psychological thrillers would probably like this. I think it's a really interesting, very quick read that, well, it did sort of keep me on the edge of my seat because I wanted to know the establishment of why the Slate House is the way it is. I wasn't particularly motivated because I was gripped by how scary the story was. But I did give it 3 out of 5 stars because I do think it was beautifully written, don't get me wrong. The writing is gorgeous. The characters and the scenery are very vivid. So I do think that this would make an impact if I was someone who really liked being creeped out a lot, and that bar is very high for me. But I think this is a very different delivery for a psychological thriller, that if people were wanting something a little different in their thrillers, they would potentially really like this. And the last 3-star book I have for the month of February, a little bit of a controversial one, I think. That is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I have a lot of things to say about this book, but I'm going to try to sum it up. 1, I think the aesthetic of this book, chef's kiss. It is so beautifully written. Normally, I am not one who likes a lot of flowery language. Here, it works. I was not bothered at all by the style in which Erin Morgenstern wrote, which I know puts a lot of people off to her work, particularly with The Starless Sea, is what I have heard. However, the tense in which she writes is different from pretty much anything I've ever read. It is active third person. So you are experiencing real time. So you're watching outside characters, so you're referring all of them in third person. But you are experiencing it real time. So all of the verbs are active tense. He walks, he sees, he runs, he breathes, whatever. That is very jarring if you are not used to that. And it took me a few chapters to get comfortable with that of, okay, I gotta give it time to warm up to how she's writing. And it did grow on me eventually. There are 3 basic stories that sort of weave into each other. There is the story of Marco and, what's her name? Celia, there we go. Who are 2 dueling magical people who are entered by their mentors / fathers into this magical competition between each other to see who's better. And it is all set in the arena of this circus that only appears at night. So it is about them competing with each other to create beautiful magical displays, getting to know each other and falling in love. That's one story. The second story is about a boy named Bailey, who becomes very attached to a pair of twins who are born on the night the circus opens. His story takes place several years in the future, and the stories slowly work together to meet somewhere in Bailey's present, so you're catching up to where Bailey is in the story. So he forms a relationship with those twins, and he longs to be a part of the circus. He desperately wants to leave his home and go be a part of that circus, and he's afforded that opportunity later in the book. So that's another separate storyline of how he gets to that point. The third one is that you are actively a part of this story. I don't read a lot of second person where the author uses you to describe what's happening, but you get an active part in wandering through the circus and sort of experiencing things as a newcomer might. And you're sort of observing things that happen in the other plot lines, but you don't know quite what they mean yet. Honestly, I think this was probably more haunting than Slate House in terms of just a very mystical, gothic circus atmosphere. Her atmosphere is gorgeous. I cannot thank this book enough for the beautiful sense imagery it gave me as I read. However, I don't think the story was all that captivating. I don't know. I think because the imagery was so powerful and you cared more about the circus than you cared about the characters. At least for me, I didn't find myself super invested in the plot line. Because I was so fascinated by all of the descriptions that were happening, which, isn't necessarily a bad thing. Because I think it's definitely a mark of Erin Morgenstern's ability that she can write such powerful descriptions. However, I do think this is a book that everyone should read because I think it is so unique that it deserves to be read and deserves to be tasted and experienced because it's that kind of visceral book. And I know there are people who really love Marco and Celia, and it's not that I didn't enjoy them. I just think this is such literally a magical book that it just kind of changes how you see things and it leaves you a little unsettled in the end, and I really, really liked it in terms of atmosphere, but I wasn't completely sold on the plot. Moving on to the 4 stars. They are both in the same series. They are 100 Cupboards and Dandelion Fire, the first 2 in the trilogy. I'm currently working on Chestnut King. Didn't get that one finished in time for the end of the month, but that's okay. Both of these are 4 stars. I mentioned before that I lost my copy of Dandelion Fire at an outdoor movie theater once. I bought a used copy online, and I finally finished it. I've gotten almost to the end so many times before I lost that book. Um, I genuinely really enjoy this series. I think probably the only thing that prevents me from giving it 5 stars is that I think the writing and the magic system is just a little beyond where I think middle grade should be. This is a middle grade series. I had to sit with some of the language and some of the magic system. Um, it just felt like it was a little too cerebral without being concrete enough for this demographic. That's my own taste. I don't think I noticed it, honestly, as much when I was younger. This is upside down. But as an adult, I was like, ugh. I think it was a little jarring at points. However, this is such a captivating story. This follows the story of Henry, who, and I had remembered this incorrectly when I did my TBR, his parents had been kidnapped. They are out of country and had been kidnapped, and he goes to live with his aunt and uncle and cousins in Henry, Kansas. And while he's there, he discovers in his attic bedroom a wall of cupboards that transport him to other worlds. And as he explores these cupboards, he comes to understand that he was adopted by his parents, which was fine with him because his parents, who were kidnapped, weren't particularly interested in him. And he sort of re-experiences life how a kid should live. But he comes to discover that his parents are most likely on the other side of those cupboards, as are the rest of his family members. I think the magic system in here is very unique. Like I said, a little hard to comprehend in some places, not as tangible as others, but basically it's the discovery of the cupboards and the villain in this series, Hermione. In 100 Cupboards and Dandelion Fire, we find out that Henry is a pauper son. He is the 7th son of a 7th son, and therefore is gifted magical abilities, and what wakes his up is dandelions and the fire that comes from that. So dandelions are his sort of touchstone to unlock his magic, and we discover more about Henry's family in this book, and a big battle is waged. This series, like I said, is so captivating. It is so out of the box unique. I have never read anything like it. It is so, like, some people I think would probably say, oh, it sounds too much like Narnia. This is not Narnia. It is so wildly different. Yes, the premise of moving through doors and cupboards or wardrobes is relatively similar into new worlds, but this is so, this took a lot. I can just imagine this took a lot of prep, because there are 100 cupboards and worlds behind almost all of them. And that took so much imagination. It is very clear that this is a unique creation, and I think that's why I enjoy it so much. I did give these 4 stars. Chances are I probably won't read these again in the future. I'm definitely keeping them because they are a touchstone for me. But I think this would be the kind of series that I would love to read to kids someday if I ever have them. This is the kind of story that I would love to watch kids react to. And so therefore I think it deserves a permanent place on my shelf. Yeah. Ugh, it just makes my heart happy. I love the concept of these books, and I can't wait to finish The Chestnut King, honestly, and give you that review next month. And finally, we have reached the end, and my one 5-star book for the month of February, inevitable drumroll, dun da da da, is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. Are we surprised? No. Oh, this book. Oh, it's hurting my heart even just to look at it. This was such an emotional roller coaster. If you haven't, go watch my vlog of me reacting to this, because you will take you on a journey. I don't know if anybody reacted as strongly as I did to those last couple chapters. I screamed, I panicked, I cried, I freaked out. It was a lot. I did not expect to get so heavily invested in this series, and I did. So this is the sequel to A Court of Thorns and Roses, if you don't know, and we follow the story of a couple months after the ending of the first book. So Farah and Tamlin are engaged to be married. the deal that Farah and Rhysand struck, that she has to go spend a week every month in the Night Court, has yet to happen. It's been several months. Rhysand hasn't come to get her. The evil isn't necessarily gone. There are definitely disruptions happening in other courts. It's become very clear that the King of Hybern still plans to declare war on Prythian so that he can take over the continent. So the tension has not lessened, it has just shifted. And in the middle of this, Farah is reeling from a lot of PTSD based on what happened under the mountain and all of the trauma that she had to go through. And she comes to realize that Tamlin is also experiencing his own PTSD based on what he went through, and tension sets in. I don't feel bad about spoiling that for you, because as soon as you read this book, you will understand why getting Tamlin out of there is the best choice. There are so many reasons why I love this book. Most of them have to do with they completely eradicated any issues I had with the first book. In the first book, I was very dissatisfied with Farah's giving over of her autonomy in terms of just accepting what Tamlin did by sending her away and forcing her to go under the mountain and deal with all of that. I was very much disheartened by the fact that some of her independence was let down because she was so motivated by the fact that I love him, that I'm going to do all of this for him, instead of saying, hey, that was a really crappy thing that you did, let's talk about that. I also thought that there were some insta-love issues. In the first book, it happened very quickly, that relationship. So I wasn't fully on board with everything that happened in the book. Did I love it? Absolutely. But there was things that grated on my nerves. Every one of those issues was solved in this book, and I was fully satisfied. So if you're ever in doubt about the first one, please read the second one, because I guarantee it will solve a lot of those issues for you. It's coming. The resolution is coming. Anyway, I love that we got a redemption of Farah, that she fully, I shouldn't say fully, she's still dealing with some stuff, but you worked with her through her trauma and her analysis of her relationship with Tamlin. You saw her come into her own. She embraced that she's high fae. She spends a lot of time with Rhysand, which is just a plus. I think the plot of this book was really good. I really liked it. And I think, whereas I think A Court of Thorns and Roses was divided down the middle between the relationship and the adventure under the mountain, this was a nice mix of both. And we got introduced to so many more characters, all of which I love. I think the world in this series basically just exploded. It expanded tenfold. So you got sucked into other places and you learned more about other courts and other characters. It was just, I mean, I honestly, I don't have a bad thing to say about this book. I know that some people don't find her series appealing. I had no issue with it. It was genuinely, I think honestly, one of the best books I've ever read, in terms of my pure unadulterated enjoyment. It was not a challenge to read, and I had no issue with it. It was a thoroughly enjoyable experience, and I cannot wait to read the next one. That is it. That is everything that I read in the month of February. So let me know down below, have you read any of those? Do you have similar thoughts? Are you going to defend any of the ones that I didn't love as much? I would love to know. All opinions are welcome here. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. It really does help me out and let me know what you guys want to see. Also, Book March Madness is starting tomorrow, so make sure that you are ready to vote in titles that you want to belong in the competition as we introduce the first of the brackets. I'm so excited. I have been waiting all year to do this. Ugh. I also want to say a huge thank you to all of you who are new subscribers. I have over 100 subscribers now, which was kind of a long shot where I was only a few months ago. So welcome. Thank you for joining. This genuinely is a place where I feel like I'm expressing part of my truest self, and I hope that you will be able to experience that same safe space here as well. So, as always, a huge thank you to the friends and family and the new subscribers who readily support me on my journey. It truly means the world to me, and I can't wait to see what's on the next page. Cheers. you.